especially in a world full of emotional vampires, chronic victims, sweet-talking manipulators, and toxic optimists. If you truly want to build an iron mind, you cannot keep entertaining people who live in chaos and call it passion. You cannot continue holding space for people who drain you and then wonder why you feel so tired. Today, we're going to expose 11 types of people who quietly destroy your self-worth, hijack your inner peace, and make you doubt your own power. And more importantly, we'll explore how to detach from them not with anger, but with wisdom, emotional intelligence, and boundaries so strong that no one can break them. If you're ready to stop entertaining what weakens you, give this video a like to support the Stoic revolution we're building. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the tools that protect your peace and sharpen your power. The truth is simple, not everyone deserves access to your life. And today we're going to show you exactly who to cut off and how to walk forward in silence. Stronger, clearer, and untouchable. Let's begin. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Epictetus. You know this person. They don't scream, they don't lash out. But every conversation feels like acid dripping into your mind. They complain about their job. They complain about their partner. They complain about the weather, the government, society, everything except themselves. And the worst part, they never change. At first, their complaints sound harmless. After all, don't we all vent sometimes, but this goes far beyond a simple rant. Chronic complainers don't seek solutions. They speak only to reinforce a worldview of bitterness, helplessness, and blame. And if you're not careful, you'll start to see life through their lens. Suddenly, your job feels inadequate. Your relationships feel flawed. And the peace you once held steady begins to crack. This is not random. This is emotional contamination. And Stoicism has a powerful lesson for us on how to deal with chronic complainers. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, remind yourself the people I meet today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." This wasn't pessimism, it was preparation. A Stoic doesn't expect perfection from others, but they also refuse to be corrupted by other people's flaws. The chronic complainer lives in direct opposition to Stoic values. They refuse personal responsibility. They reject emotional regulation. They carry resentment like it's a badge of honor. In Stoic philosophy, constant complaining is a symptom of a weak, undisciplined mind, a mind that hasn't learned to separate what can be controlled from what cannot. That's why you must keep your distance, not because complainers are evil, but because they're infected. And emotional infection spreads silently. They plant seeds of doubt in your confidence. They magnify small inconveniences into overwhelming problems. They make you feel guilty for having peace when they don't. This is how they drain your energy without ever raising their voice, and the only way to protect yourself is the Stoic way. First, set psychological boundaries through strategic silence. You don't have to argue, correct, or debate. You simply stop feeding their fire. When someone repeats the same complaint for the third time, calmly ask, "That sounds frustrating. What are you planning to do about it?" If they stumble or change the subject, you've just uncovered the truth. They don't want solutions, they only want sympathy. Second, remember, your energy is sacred. Just because someone is venting doesn't mean you owe them your focus. Your peace of mind is a form of wealth, and you have every right to protect it with discipline. Third, create emotional distance. If you can't cut ties, then cut depth. Be kind, but don't allow their chaos into your soul. You're not obligated to be anyone's unpaid therapist, especially when they're addicted to their own misery. Here are a few reflection questions to sharpen your awareness. Who in your life leaves you emotionally drained after every conversation? Are you holding space for someone who has no intention of growing? When was the last time your mood shifted because of someone else's negativity? Emotional intelligence means knowing when to listen and when it's time to walk away. The truth is, complainers don't want change. They want attention. And if you're not careful, you'll become their next topic of complaint. That's why Stoics remind us your peace is your power. Protect it relentlessly. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Which brings us to the next type of person who threatens your growth, the excuse maker. This is the one who always has a reason why they haven't started, why they can't change, why life is too hard. It's not that they lack intelligence or opportunity. What they lack is accountability. And if you keep them close, their excuses will quietly infect your mindset with self-doubt, complacency, and a watered-down version of your own potential. Excuses are even more dangerous than failure. Failure teaches. Excuses trap. They don't look toxic on the surface, but they slowly erode the strength of your spirit. Excuse makers often sound rational. I would do it, but now's not the right time. Not everyone is meant to succeed. Some people just get lucky. Discipline. That's just not my personality. On the surface, these statements feel logical, even harmless. But here's the truth. Excuses are nothing more than fear wearing a mask. They create a false sense of comfort so you don't have to confront the discomfort of growth. But that comfort always comes with a price: your ambition, your self-worth, and your evolution. The Stoics warned us about this long ago. Seneca reminded us that time itself isn't the problem, how we waste it is. And one of the most subtle ways people waste their lives is by becoming experts at justifying inaction. Excuse makers violate Stoic principles because Stoicism is built on one powerful idea: your strength lies in what you can control: your thoughts, your discipline, your effort, your attitude. The excuse maker surrenders all of that. They hand over their agency to luck, to circumstances, to other people, and then call it being realistic. But Marcus Aurelius made it clear you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Excuse makers live in denial of that truth, and if you spend too much time around them, you'll start to lower your own standards just to fit their comfort zone. Suddenly you find yourself thinking, maybe I'm pushing too hard. Maybe I should lower the bar. Maybe self-discipline really is too extreme. And before you realize it, you start believing that average is acceptable and excellence is obsessive. But the Stoic reality is this: growth requires friction. Self-mastery demands responsibility. You cannot build a strong, high-performance mindset in an environment that rewards excuses and punishes effort. So, how do you handle excuse makers the Stoic way? First, lead by example, not confrontation. Stoics don't waste energy arguing. They demonstrate. Let your habits, your consistency, and your discipline do the talking. You don't need to prove anyone wrong. You just need to keep showing what's possible when you take ownership of your life. Second, pay attention to your inner dialogue. Excuse makers often plant their mindset into your language. Notice when you catch yourself saying things like, I'll try, I'll do it when I can, maybe later. Replace those with powerful, action-oriented words: I will, this matters, let's go. This is emotional intelligence in action, choosing words that reinforce action instead of avoidance. Third, build boundaries around your energy. You don't need to cut everyone off, but you do need to protect your time and space from people who normalize self-sabotage. If someone is always justifying their stagnation and it starts bleeding into your focus, pull back. Reflection is the key to awareness. Who in your life always has an excuse ready, no matter the situation? How often do you catch yourself echoing those excuses in your own mind? And most importantly, what opportunities are you letting slip because excuses felt safer than effort? Your peace, your growth, and your strength all depend on the discipline to see excuses for what they really are: a slow erosion of potential. The Stoic way is simple. Reject excuses, embrace responsibility, and live in alignment with the power that is fully yours to control. Excuse makers often sound perfectly reasonable. I would do it, but now's not the right time. Not everyone is meant to succeed. Some people are just lucky. Discipline. That's just not who I am. On the surface, these phrases feel harmless, even logical, but the truth is, excuses are nothing more than fear wearing a mask. They create the illusion of safety so you don't have to face the discomfort of growth. But that false comfort always comes at a cost: your ambition, your self-worth, and your evolution. The Stoics warned us about this trap. Seneca taught that time itself isn't the issue, how we waste it is. And one of the most subtle ways people waste their lives is by becoming masters at justifying inaction. Excuse makers violate the very foundation of Stoicism. Stoic philosophy is built on the idea that your power lies in what you can control: your thoughts, your discipline, your effort, your attitude. But the excuse maker surrenders all of that. They hand their agency over to chance, to circumstances, to other people, and then try to convince you that it's just being realistic. But Marcus Aurelius made it clear: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Excuse makers live in denial of this truth. And if you spend too much time around them, their mindset begins to rub off on you. You start to question yourself. Maybe I'm pushing too hard. Maybe I should lower my standards. Maybe self-discipline really is too extreme. Before long, you start to believe that mediocrity is acceptable and that striving for excellence is somehow obsessive. But here's the Stoic reality. Growth requires friction. Self-mastery demands responsibility. You cannot build a strong, high-performance mindset in an environment that rewards excuses and punishes effort. So how do you deal with excuse makers the Stoic way? First, lead by example, not confrontation. Stoics don't waste time arguing, they demonstrate. Let your habits, your consistency, and your discipline speak for you. You don't need to prove them wrong. You just need to keep showing what's possible when you take full ownership of your life. Second, watch your inner dialogue. Excuse makers have a way of embedding their mindset into your language. Pay attention to phrases like, "I'll try," "I'll get to it when I can," "It's not the right moment." Replace them with action-driven language: "I will," "This matters," "Let's go." This is emotional intelligence in practice, choosing words that reinforce progress instead of avoidance. Third, build boundaries around your energy. You don't have to cut everyone off completely, but you do need to protect your time and focus from people who normalize self-sabotage. If someone constantly justifies their stagnation and it starts bleeding into your mindset, step back. Reflection sharpens awareness. Who in your life always has an excuse ready for why they can't grow? How often do you catch yourself echoing those same excuses in your own mind? And most importantly, how much of your potential are you sacrificing just to stay in their comfort zone? Your peace, your growth, and your power depend on rejecting excuses. The Stoic path is simple: distance yourself from excuse energy, take responsibility for your choices, and keep moving forward with clarity and strength. Who in your life always has a reason not to take action? Have their words ever made you doubt your own ambition or slow your pace to match their fear? Ask yourself this: are your decisions based on logic and values, or are they shaped by someone else's hesitation? Remember this timeless truth: the more you sweat in silence, the less you bleed in regret. Excuse makers aren't evil people, but they are dangerous to your discipline. They teach you to make peace with mediocrity, to soften your edge, to put off your greatness until life feels perfect. But the Stoics knew the reality: life will never be perfect. What can be perfect, however, is your effort. So choose effort, choose action. And if that means walking alone, then walk with pride, because walking alone with purpose is better than standing still in the crowd of excuses. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, you always own the option of having no opinion. And that brings us to another type of person who threatens your peace: the gossiper. You've seen them before. They always know who's dating who failed, who messed up, who said what. Their words are coated in charm, dripping with secrets, but beneath the surface lies insecurity. On the outside, gossip may seem entertaining, but underneath it's corrosive. Gossip is not harmless, it's contagious. It's the currency of the emotionally weak. It thrives on judgment, envy, and comparison. And if you're exposed to it long enough, you don't just hear it, you become it. Soon you find yourself questioning people based on rumors instead of truth. You waste mental energy chasing whispers instead of results. Your mind drifts outward, focused on others, while your own growth withers. That's the real cost of gossip. It disconnects you from your values and distracts you from your personal evolution. The Stoics warned us a life of virtue begins with a simple choice: focus only on what is within your control. Gossip is the opposite. It feeds on what other people are doing, saying, or failing at, none of which you can control. And here's the danger: people who gossip to you will eventually gossip about you. You're not special, you're just temporarily useful. That's how gossipers build false intimacy by bonding over judgment. They create connection not through truth, but through tearing others down. And when you engage even passively, you co-sign their weakness. Worse, you weaken your own. Every moment spent gossiping is a moment stolen from building your self-worth, sharpening your discipline, and strengthening your character. As Marcus Aurelius said, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Gossip traps you in observation mode, never in action. It's always easier to discuss someone else's mistakes than to confront your own. That's why gossip hijacks emotional intelligence. It diverts your focus outward instead of inward. Gossipers disguise opinion as fact-use charm to manipulate attention and trick you into self-comparison instead of self-awareness. But emotional intelligence begins the moment you recognize this manipulation, and it strengthens when you refuse to play along. You don't need to fight gossip, you simply need to rise above it. The Stoic way of handling gossipers is simple: you don't fight it, you outgrow it. First, don't engage. Withdraw with elegance. The most powerful move you can make is silence. If someone starts gossiping, answer with calm restraint. I don't really know them well enough to say. Or even better, redirect with, let's talk about something that actually helps us grow. You don't need to lecture or scold. You simply refuse to participate in their mental laziness. Second, recenter on what you can control. You can't stop people from talking, but you can stop your mind from absorbing their noise. Every time you focus on someone else's flaws, you delay your own development. And if self-mastery is your mission, that delay is a luxury you cannot afford. Third, audit your environment. Ask yourself, who in my life thrives on the downfall of others? Who constantly talks about people but rarely talks about ideas, goals, or growth? Then act accordingly. You are not obligated to entertain weakness, no matter how charming it may appear. Reflect with honesty. Have you ever repeated gossip only to regret it later? Are your conversations about people's lives or your own progress? Do you respect yourself enough to walk away from unproductive dialogue? Socrates once said, "Strong minds discuss ideas, weak minds discuss people." Gossipers don't need your judgment, they need your absence, because every second you feed their drama is a second stolen from your discipline. And in a Stoic life, there's no time for distractions. You have a mission, you have a mind to protect, you have inner peace to preserve. So when gossip comes your way, remember this: silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom in motion. Epictetus reminded us, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. True strength is found in simplicity, not in drama. And that brings us to another subtle threat to your peace: the envious. This person rarely shows their hand openly. Their silence is louder than their words. They're the one who doesn't clap when you succeed, the one who ignores your good news, the one who looks you in the eye yet quietly hopes you fail. Envy doesn't just resent your success, it sabotages your peace, your confidence, and your ability to embrace your worth. And its danger isn't loud, it's subtle. It slips into your life quietly. Third, choose peace over proximity. If someone's anger routinely invades your peace, walk away through backhanded compliments, fake smiles, sudden distance after your achievements, or sly questions like, "Don't you think you're doing too much?" The envious don't target your weaknesses. They target your strengths, because your growth is a mirror reflecting everything they've chosen not to pursue. And that truth stings. The Stoics saw envy as irrational. Why? Because it shifts focus from what you can build within yourself to what others already have. Envy drags your attention away from effort, discipline, and virtue and anchors it to outcomes you cannot control: someone else's possessions, achievements, or recognition. Epictetus reminded us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Because real growth isn't about validation from others. It's about inner development, not external comparisons. But the envious don't live by this code. Their worth is measured by comparison, and comparison is the thief of peace. When you rise, the envious feel small, and instead of rising with you, they subtly, consistently, and sometimes cruelly try to drag you down to their level. That's the emotional toll of envy. Keep envious people close for too long and something dangerous happens. You begin to shrink yourself just to make them comfortable. You hesitate before sharing your joy. You downplay your success so you don't appear too much. And slowly, without even realizing it, you start to believe that your light is a burden. But that's not humility, that's self-sabotage. The longer you tolerate envy, the more you abandon the full expression of your potential. You were not born to dim your light. You were born to live in alignment with your purpose, and that means celebrating your growth without guilt. How do you handle the envious the Stoic way? First, practice detachment. Their emotions are not your burden. If someone resents your growth, that's their wound to heal, not yours to fix. You can be kind, you can be graceful, but you are not responsible for managing another person's insecurity. Second, protect your peace by protecting your wins. Not everyone deserves access to your victories. It's okay to share less. It's okay to grow in silence until you find a circle that celebrates you instead of competing with you. That's emotional intelligence in action, knowing who you can trust with your joy and who turns it into discomfort. Third, replace envy with admiration both in yourself and in others. When you see someone succeed, let your instinct be curiosity, not comparison. Ask yourself, what can I learn from their journey? And when you succeed, celebrate without shame, because a high-performance mindset requires self-respect. Reflect for a moment. Who in your life goes silent when you share good news? Have you ever dulled your shine to avoid making others uncomfortable? Are you surrounded by people who cheer for you or by those who secretly compete with you? Remember, your success will test more relationships than your failures ever will. Envy is not about you, it's about what someone else refuses to face within themselves. But if you keep excusing their energy, you'll eventually mirror their mindset. You'll start believing that confidence is arrogance, that ambition is selfish, that staying small is the price you pay for peace. But Stoicism reminds us peace doesn't come from shrinking. Peace comes from standing tall with clarity, with virtue, and with an iron mind. So the next time someone refuses to clap for you, walk away. Because real friends don't fear your light, they rise with it. Seneca once said the greatest remedy for anger is delay, and that leads us to another type of destructive energy, the hot-tempered. You've met them. They snap at waiters. They slam doors when things don't go their way. They turn every disagreement into a battlefield. They walk into a room and leave behind emotional debris. These are the people who confuse anger with strength. But here's the truth, a person ruled by their temper isn't powerful, they're possessed. And if you stay around them long enough, you risk becoming just like them, reactive, unstable, and ultimately weak. Because anger is not a flex. Anger is the loss of command. In today's culture, rage is often glorified. Movies, music, even politics portray explosive outbursts as passion, strength, or power. But the Stoics saw it very differently. Seneca didn't hold back when he said, anger is a brief madness. Control it or it will control you. And here's why. Anger makes you easy to manipulate. It clouds your judgment. It trades long-term wisdom for short-term domination. In truth, anger is the emotion of the undisciplined. At the core of Stoicism is self-mastery, the ability to govern your mind no matter what the outside world throws your way. But the hot-tempered live in constant emotional exposure. They're slaves to every stimulus. Someone disrespects them, they explode. A delay happens, they erupt. A plan changes, they fall apart. That isn't strength. That's predictability. And predictability is weakness because if the world can provoke you at will, you are not in control. Your environment is. The danger of staying close to angry people is that over time you normalize their behavior. You begin to brace for their explosions. You walk on eggshells. You tell yourself, that's just how they are. But the psychological cost is enormous. Your emotional safety becomes compromised. Your nervous system stays in defense mode. You stop responding with clarity and instead live in constant reaction. Even worse, their anger begins to shape your mind. You start to believe that reaction equals power when in reality reaction is surrender. So how do you handle the hot-tempered the Stoic way? First, master yourself before trying to manage them. You don't put out a fire by throwing gasoline on it. The Stoic doesn't match rage with rage. They disarm chaos with composure. When someone explodes, you don't escalate, you observe, you breathe, you detach. This isn't weakness, it's emotional intelligence under pressure. Second, withdraw your emotional availability. Anger addicts feed on your reactions. They want to provoke you so they can justify themselves. Take that fuel away. Respond with clarity or don't respond at all. Let them burn out in their own fire. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury, not out of hatred but out of principle. Your role isn't to fix them, your role is to protect you. Boundaries aren't punishment, they are protection. And when you're dealing with the emotionally volatile, boundaries are non-negotiable. Now reflect, who in your life cannot go a single day without losing control? Have you ever caught yourself reacting more sharply just because they made it feel normal? Do you confuse silence with weakness, or do you recognize it as real power? Remember this timeless truth. He who angers you controls you. Here's what no one tells you. Anger looks powerful until it destroys everything it touches: careers, relationships, reputations, peace. People who let their temper rule their lives eventually run out of people willing to walk beside them. The Stoics understood this truth long ago. They taught that the calmest person in the room is usually the strongest because they don't waste energy proving power, they conserve it. So if someone in your circle constantly burns hot, let them rage alone. You were not made for endless war. You were made for mastery. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. Then there's another kind of person who drains you differently, the drama magnet. You walk into the room and suddenly everything is urgent, everything is personal, everything is about them. You listen, you console, you try to problem solve, but it never ends. Because this isn't friendship, it's a storm that never passes. And here's the truth, it's not your storm. Drama isn't emotion, it's emotional manipulation. Drama magnets don't just feel things deeply, they create chaos to control connection. They inflate small issues into life-altering crises. They pull multiple people into every conflict. They play the victim, then the hero, then the villain, all in one day. Why? Because drama feeds them. It gives them attention, relevance, and a false sense of importance. But for you, it robs your emotional clarity. It depletes your peace. And worst of all, it pulls you out of alignment with your own values. The Stoics taught a simple principle: don't react, respond. Drama magnets violate that principle with every breath. They don't want peace, they want reaction. Because your reaction is their fuel. But a Stoic mind doesn't take the bait. It doesn't enter battles it didn't choose. Because the moment you react, you've already lost your discipline. And without discipline, your peace is up for sale. The psychological cost of living in someone else's chaos is heavy. Being around a drama magnet feels like constant fatigue you can't explain. You overthink simple conversations. You feel guilty for setting boundaries. You're told that calm means cold, that silence means betrayal, that self-focus means selfishness. But here's the Stoic truth: peace isn't selfish, peace is sacred. So how do you handle the drama magnet? The Stoic way: first, stop trying to fix them. They don't want solutions, they want attention. You are not their therapist. You are not their savior. You are only responsible for your own emotional energy, not theirs. Second practice: detach silence. Don't defend, don't explain, don't absorb. Let them rage, spiral, vent while you remain the stillness at the center of their storm. As Thomas Carlyle once wrote, silence is the element in which great things fashion themselves. Very Stoic in spirit. Third, set boundaries and enforce them. It's not enough to say, I need space. You must live it, reinforce it, protect it. Cut the cord between their chaos and your identity. You can care for someone without carrying everything for them. Now reflect, who in your life turns every moment into an emotional spotlight on themselves? Do you feel drained, guilty, or unbalanced after every interaction with them? Have you mistaken drama for depth or emotional volatility for true connection? Emotional maturity isn't reacting to chaos, it's returning to clarity. And in the Stoic life, clarity is where true strength begins. The drama magnet doesn't want peace, they want attention. And if you're not careful, you'll begin to confuse exhaustion for love. But the Stoics remind us peace is not found by avoiding every conflict, it's found by refusing to step into the unnecessary ones. So when someone tries to drag you into their storm, don't just stay grounded, remain sovereign, remain unshaken. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change, for I seek the truth which never harmed anyone." Now, not everyone will shout like the hot-tempered or stir chaos like the drama magnet. Some people seem calm, polite, even reasonable, yet their presence is absolutely corrosive. These are the naysayers. The naysayer doesn't openly attack your dreams. They don't yell, they whisper. Are you sure that's realistic? What if it doesn't work out? That's a bit risky, don't you think? Their words sound helpful, but they're not. They're poison disguised as concern. And here's the subtle danger. The naysayer doesn't question your ideas. They make you question yourself. Their words echo in your mind long after they've left. You start second-guessing your vision. You scale back your ambition. You begin trading courage for caution, not because you believe it's right, but because someone else didn't believe in you. That's the hidden power of the naysayer. Far more dangerous than direct criticism because it erodes you from the inside out. The Stoics warned against this. Stoicism teaches us to filter everything through reason, not fear. But naysayers make fear sound like reason. They confuse pessimism with pragmatism. They label insecurity as intelligence. Epictetus reminded us it's not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. And naysayers are masters of distorted interpretation. They never highlight what could go right, only what might go wrong. If you let them too close, they will quietly erode your confidence under the mask of realism. And here's the tragedy: many people never fail. Not because they succeed, but because they never even start. Why? Because somewhere along the way, a voice said, "That's not possible. Be careful. Who do you think you are?" That voice didn't speak just once. It repeated until it became their own inner voice. And now they live a life of safety, but no satisfaction, of security, but no self-worth, of comfort, but no courage. So how do you handle the naysayer the Stoic way? First, separate intention from impact. Not all naysayers are malicious. Some truly believe they're protecting you. But here's the reality: their intention doesn't erase their impact. Doubt, no matter how softly spoken, can still poison your confidence if you let it in. If someone's words make you shrink, stall, or stay silent, they're not helping you. Be kind, but be clear. I value your concern, but I trust my vision. Second, filter feedback through logic, not emotion. Before you accept any criticism, ask yourself, is this based on data or fear? Is this coming from experience or just projection? Do they actually walk the path they're trying to talk me out of? If the answer is no, dismiss it quietly and powerfully. Third, build an inner wall of conviction. A Stoic doesn't need universal approval, they need internal alignment. When your intentions are rooted in virtue and growth and courage and truth, you don't beg for validation, you act. Let your courage speak louder than their caution. Now pause for reflection. Who in your life always plays the devil's advocate but never advocates for your potential? Have you delayed a dream because someone else couldn't see it? Are you building your life on your values or on their fears? Remember, naysayers don't need to destroy you. They only need to plant enough fear for you to destroy yourself. But Stoicism gives you the antidote: self-command, inner conviction, and a mind led by reason, not reaction. So, the next time someone tells you your dream is too ambitious, remember you're only hearing the voice of someone who stopped dreaming. Keep going. As Seneca said, a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. We live in a culture that worships positivity. Smile more. Think happy thoughts. Good vibes only. It sounds uplifting until it becomes a trap. Because not every moment is meant to feel good, and not every truth is meant to be sugar-coated. Some storms are meant to be faced, not denied, but the toxic positivist doesn't believe that. They cover every wound with glitter. They call pain low vibration. They treat emotional honesty as weakness. And without realizing it, they blind you with constant sunshine. Here's the lie behind forced positivity. At first glance, these people seem helpful. They're cheerful, upbeat, always smiling. But when life gets hard, and it always does, they respond with cliches. Just stay positive. Don't think about it. It could be worse. Everything happens for a reason. What they're really saying is this: I don't want to deal with your reality. I'd rather bypass your pain than face it with you. Let's pretend everything's fine even when it's not. That's not support. That's spiritual avoidance. And Stoicism has no tolerance for denial disguised as encouragement. Because Stoicism isn't about pretending life is good. It's about preparing for when it's not. It's about facing suffering with courage, not covering it with cliches. It's about seeing reality clearly, even when it's brutal. Marcus Aurelius never said, ignore hardship. He said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. That means we acknowledge the storm, we don't deny it. We choose not to let it dictate our inner weather. The toxic positivist does the opposite. They ignore the storm completely. And worse, they teach you to feel guilty for not smiling through disaster. That's the hidden damage of forced optimism. When you're surrounded by those who refuse to face reality, you stop expressing yourself honestly. You bury emotions instead of processing them. And every time you do, you lose a piece of your peace. When you begin to associate sadness with failure, you step onto dangerous ground. Because pain that is buried doesn't vanish, it festers. It transforms into anxiety, resentment, isolation, and eventually emotional detachment. The Stoics understood this well. Pain is a teacher if you're willing to listen, but the toxic positivist tells you to silence that teacher and smile anyway. That's not strength, it's suppression. So how do we handle toxic positivity the Stoic way first? Replace forced positivity with rational optimism. Stoicism is not about being negative, it's about being prepared. A Stoic asks, what's within my control? What can I learn? What can I endure? You don't need blind faith, you need clear vision paired with grounded action. Second, create space for emotional honesty. You are allowed to say, this hurts, this is hard, I don't have it figured out. That's not weakness, that's emotional intelligence. And any relationship that doesn't allow that honesty is not a safe place for your growth. Third, stop mistaking denial for wisdom. If someone constantly tells you to avoid negative thoughts, ask yourself, are they really helping me grow or just keeping me comfortable in delusion? Pain is real, and Stoicism doesn't hide from it. It teaches you to train through it. Now reflect, do you feel safe expressing pain, or do you feel like you always have to pretend you're okay? Have you ever silenced your struggles just to make someone else comfortable? Are you surrounding yourself with people who validate your growth or people who deny your reality? The Stoic does not deny emotion. He disciplines it through truth. Toxic positivity doesn't heal, it hides. And whatever you hide from will one day control you. But when you face life with open eyes, even when it's uncomfortable, you reclaim your power. So the next time someone says, just think positive, respond differently. I will think clearly. I will act wisely. I will feel deeply, and I will still rise. That's not low vibration. That's inner power. As Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. We've all been hurt, betrayed, rejected, overlooked, undervalued. Pain is part of life, but staying stuck in pain, that's a choice. The victim doesn't just feel pain, they wear it like a uniform. Their wounds become their identity. Their trauma becomes their conversation starter. Their helplessness becomes their comfort zone. And if you stay too close, they'll invite you into their world, a world where nothing is ever their fault and everything is someone else's responsibility. There is a difference between being a victim and living as one. We all experience injustice, but the Stoic refuses to let injustice define them. The victim, however, replays the same story again and again. They blame others, the system, the universe. They avoid growth by saying, this is just who I am now. But that is not identity, that is surrender. That's the danger of emotional resignation. If you absorb it long enough, you start believing that maybe healing isn't possible. You begin to whisper to yourself, maybe I should lower my expectations. Maybe I'm broken too. That's the infection of victimhood. It doesn't just weigh down the body, it corrodes the mind. It convinces you that suffering is a life sentence. But Stoicism teaches a different truth. Epictetus lost his freedom, his body, and his status, but he never lost his mindset. He said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." The Stoic doesn't deny pain, but they refuse to be defined by it. To be Stoic is to say, yes, this happened. Yes, it hurt. But now what will I do with it? That's not denial. That's self-command. The danger of staying around people who live in constant victimhood is subtle but real. You stop being their friend and start being their therapist. You begin to absorb their helpless worldview. You feel guilty for having hope or ambition. And worst of all, you start mistaking survival for strength. But Stoicism isn't about survival, it's about transcendence. Because surviving your past isn't the goal. Rising from it is. So how do you handle the victim the Stoic way? First, empathize but don't enable. You can care without carrying. You can support their healing without validating their stagnation. A powerful response is, I hear your pain, but I also see your power. What do you want to do about it? Second, draw a line between emotion and identity. It's okay to feel lost, but it's not okay to build your home there. If someone defines themselves only by what hurt them, you must protect your emotional boundaries. Their story is not your responsibility to relive. Third, encourage ownership, not outsourcing. Real healing begins where blame ends. Ask them, what's in your control now? How can you respond differently this time? Who do you want to become? These are Stoic questions. They don't erase the past, but they reopen the door to inner power if the other person is willing to walk through it. Now reflect for yourself. Do you feel like you're constantly managing someone else's pain while ignoring your own? Have you held back your joy because someone in your life always makes it about their struggle? Are you being pulled into someone's victim cycle or inviting them into your healing path? Victimhood is not a personality, it's a phase, and you are meant to outgrow it. The victim often wants sympathy more than transformation. They seek validation for their story, not elevation from it. But if you stay in their orbit too long, you'll forget that you're allowed to outgrow your past. You'll stop rising because you're too busy rescuing. Stoicism reminds us you are not defined by what broke you. You are defined by how you rebuild. So don't sink just to prove your empathy. Rise and let your rising be the invitation. Epictetus said, "He who is not a slave to another's opinion is truly free, and freedom isn't always threatened by enemies. Sometimes it comes disguised as kindness, compliments laced with obligation support that subtly erodes your confidence, smiles that cost you your voice. Not every threat is loud. Some arrive wrapped in softness, yet chip away at your strength all the same. Manipulation is one of the most dangerous threats to your peace, not because it's loud, but because it's subtle. A manipulator doesn't raise their voice, they raise your self-doubt. They twist your emotions so carefully that you can't tell if the problem is them or if it's you. Manipulation isn't about power, it's about confusion. The manipulator's goal isn't domination, it's disorientation. They want you second-guessing your decisions, apologizing for your boundaries, and feeling guilty every time you say no. Because as long as you're confused, you'll stay compliant. And here's the trap. The more emotionally intelligent you are, the easier it is for them to exploit you. They know you'll listen. They know you'll care. They know you'll hesitate before walking away. And if you don't recognize it, you'll find yourself over-explaining, over-giving, over-apologizing, and undervaluing yourself. Marcus Aurelius once said the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. But a manipulator doesn't want you to trust your thoughts. They want to insert theirs. They chip away at your confidence until you look to them for clarity. They don't control you by force, they control you by corrupting your inner compass. But Stoicism rejects this, because in Stoicism, true freedom isn't about external liberty. It's about mental clarity. It's about the ability to think for yourself, to feel without distortion, and to act in alignment with your values, not someone else's agenda. So how do you know if you're dealing with a manipulator? Look at the signs. You feel guilty for setting boundaries. You find yourself justifying decisions that should never need explaining. They reward you when you comply and withdraw when you don't. Your self-worth slowly erodes and you can't even explain why. That's not connection, it's emotional colonization. And if you don't guard your mind, someone else will occupy it. How do you handle the manipulator the Stoic way? First, reclaim your internal authority. You don't owe anyone an explanation for protecting your peace. If someone makes you feel guilty for honoring your boundaries, that's not love, that's leverage. A Stoic knows, my peace is mine to preserve, not yours to negotiate. Second, observe their patterns, not their words. Manipulators are masters of language. They'll say the right things but repeat the same behaviors. Don't get distracted by their promises, watch their patterns. Then decide with clarity whether their presence aligns with your principles. Third, enforce boundaries without emotional leakage. You don't need to yell. You don't need to prove anything. You simply need to act, walk away, limit access, speak clearly. Then let your absence reinforce what your words already said. This is strategic detachment, the Stoics' ultimate form of emotional protection. Now reflect. Do you feel emotionally lighter or heavier after being with them? Are you making choices out of alignment just to keep the peace? Have you started shrinking your voice to protect their comfort? A manipulator doesn't take your power, they convince you to give it away. But remember, your power is not theirs to hold. The manipulator doesn't need force, they just need access, and you always have the choice to close the door. The Stoic way isn't about fighting for control, it's about removing the need for anyone's approval altogether. Because once you master your emotions, once you take full ownership of your mind, you become unmanipulable, and that, my friend, is true inner power. We've come a long way from complainers to manipulators, but there's still one more silent threat left. Not the person who manipulates you, but the one who wears you down through indulgence, distraction, and lack of discipline. Marcus Aurelius said, if you seek tranquility, do less or do what's essential and do it with reason. The overindulgent is often fun. They laugh loudly. They say things like, come on, don't be so serious. Life's too short. Treat yourself. You can't be disciplined all the time. They don't yell. They don't insult. But their influence is quietly corrosive. This is the overindulgent, the person who makes mediocrity feel like a lifestyle and weakness sound like freedom. The lie of indulgent living is seductive. They promote pleasure over purpose, escape over endurance, instant gratification over inner growth. But they don't call it weakness. They call it living in the moment. They call it being free. They call it self-love. But here's what they really mean. I'm avoiding discomfort. I fear discipline. I don't want to confront the version of me that could be better. And if you don't recognize the subtle erosion, you'll begin to call your own compromises balance. The Stoics weren't anti-pleasure, but they knew that pleasure without principle leads to slavery. Epictetus said freedom is the only worthy goal in life, but you cannot be free if you are a slave to your passions. Overindulgence isn't freedom, it's dependence with better branding. When you surround yourself with people who normalize laziness, binge habits, irresponsibility, or emotional numbing, disguised as self-care, you start to build a lifestyle that feels good on the surface, but rots you from within. The cost of tolerating the overindulgent is steep. You delay your goals because there's always tomorrow. You abandon discomfort and with it growth. You stop demanding excellence from yourself because no one around you does. Soon, mediocrity becomes culture, and you stop rising not because you can't, but because no one is reminding you that you can. The overindulgent rarely destroy your life outright. They don't need to. They simply erode your standards slowly, and that alone is enough to keep you from becoming who you were meant to be. So how do you handle the overindulgent the Stoic way? First, don't argue. Out-discipline them. You don't need to convince anyone to change, you just need to become the counterexample. Let your clarity, routine, and focus speak louder than their noise. Second, reframe discipline as liberation. To the undisciplined, structure looks like a prison, but to the Stoic, structure is the path to freedom. Discipline isn't punishment, it's the ultimate expression of self-respect. Third, protect your inner environment. If you're constantly surrounded by people who ridicule structure, belittle growth, or avoid challenge, change the room. You don't need to become a monk, but you do need to guard your momentum as if your life depends on it. Because in truth it does. Reflection questions for personal power. Are you calling compromise balance? Who in your circle normalizes mediocrity? And are you protecting your standards or letting them quietly fade? Have you ever excused self-sabotage by calling it self-love? Who in your life encourages comfort over commitment? Are you living with intention or just reacting to pleasure? Because true freedom isn't doing whatever you feel like. True freedom is having the strength to do what serves your highest self. The overindulgent often mean no harm, but they normalize the very habits that keep you average. And in a world where ease is worshipped, discipline becomes rebellion. So live with restraint. Speak with purpose. Build a life that makes indulgence look like a cheap substitute for what you were truly meant to do. As Epictetus said, associate with those who help you become the best version of yourself. You've seen it now, not just the obvious enemies, but the subtle ones, the sweet ones, the ones who drain your spirit in whispers, not screams. Some call them friends, but their patterns reveal the truth. They complain and call it connection. They lie and call it protection. They manipulate and call it love. They normalize weakness and call it freedom. And deep down, you've always known, you've spent enough time tolerating what your soul already told you was eroding your strength. You're not just cutting people off, you're reclaiming yourself. This isn't about becoming bitter, it's about becoming bulletproof. It's not about being cold, it's about being clear. Because every moment you waste explaining your boundaries to someone who keeps crossing them is a moment stolen from your growth, your peace, and your greatness. You don't need more explanations, you need more execution, you don't need more approval, you need more alignment. And what happens when you finally let them go? You create space for emotional intelligence, for self-worth, for inner peace, for spiritual discipline, for a high-performance mindset that no longer bends for low-frequency people. So let them talk, let them wonder, let them regret. Because your silence will say more than any goodbye ever could. Here's what you do now. Like this video if it lit a fire under your emotional boundaries. Subscribe to Stoicism Breath for daily wisdom that fortifies your mind. Share this with someone who's finally ready to walk away from what weakens them. And drop a comment below. I protect my peace. I protect my path. Let the world know you're no longer available for chaos. Remember this. You don't rise by being accepted. You rise by becoming unshakable. Walk in silence. Stand in truth. And rise as if no one saw it coming.